Do you believe in free will?
Free will. I don't know. Tough question.
Okay, I'll formulate my argument that
Do you say that we have free will or we don't?
we don't. We don't have free will in the way that is traditionally thought of free will. Mainly because I don't believe the idea of self that most cultures and most traditions have holds any truth in reality. It's just a bunch of chemicals and actions and reactions.
I mean, sometimes I agree with you because, like, I don't know. Sometimes I get like hungry, and then I like completely like behave like a weird person. And like later on, when I like reflect back and like why I did certain actions that I did, I'm like, oh, well, I was just hungry. It's like, how can you have this like free will? Like, if you kind of like act this, like all of a sudden act a certain way when you're just like out of fuel to a degree. So it is kind of fun to think about it that way, that you don't actually have it and it's just a bunch of chemicals.
I mean, first of all, I feel like knowing that or believing that you don't have it doesn't really make a difference on a day to day. I still, well, okay. Here's one thing. I do what I do. I keep myself busy so that I don't think about these thoughts. But funny enough, I actually, chose something to do that it involves talking about these stuff. But anyway, generally I try to avoid it on a day to day because it's just too depressing.
It's not depressing. I don't think
it can get depressing if you're in a low position, low mental health situation.
Are you in a low mental health situation?
I was quite recently, and I.
Do you want to talk about it
thoughts,
on podcast?
Not necessarily. It was like it was post quarantine, but I was still quarantined because of reasons. I was literally on a hill. In a house, in a room, no contact with the outside world.
Let's talk about it after the podcast.
Yeah.
But I don't think that. I mean, in general, this is the same argument. It's like, okay, is there a life after death? It's like no, right? But is it depressing?
It's depressing to me today, but it won't be depressing to my corpse because it's just gone. Here's the thing, like that. We obviously don't know what consciousness is, but what it seems like is just a little, when you cook something and there's this nice smell in that whole house, that's what consciousness feels like. It's that smell that also makes the food more delicious.
Well, what I know is you are a collection of cells. And each one of those want to live. So I think the best strategy for them was to form this consciousness, quote unquote, so that like the brain doesn't say, oh, well, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about you. Hand cell, die. So you think of yourself as a whole. So these cells work together. Maybe there were other forms of life that maybe were multi-conscious. That makes any sense. But I think at the end, it kind of gets converged to for a lack of a better word, a mono conscious species. So a mono conscious species is like what I don't know these words, I'm just making up, but is what I want to think of as us, and like probably all of the species that we know of. But maybe a bi-conscious. Maybe there is a bi-conscious species. I don't know. Maybe like, imagine like the half of your brain would like decide for half of your body, which it actually to a degree does, right? Like your right half decides for the left of your body, and vice versa. But imagine like there was more so of a disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
So then that would be kind of that would introduce more arguments in a way. Even within yourself, you still have some like counterintuitive stuff going on.
There's a lot of randomness, which is why you can't have destiny. You know, like let's just say 99% of the actions that a living thing takes are a reaction to its environment, whether it's just hunger or the drive for reproduction, whatever. But there's like one element, the tiny amount of randomness somehow. Maybe there isn't any randomness, or maybe it's so tiny that it doesn't affect anything. But I feel like that randomness is what makes, because that randomness could be Hitler deciding to declare war on USSR, or for Genghis Khan to have that extra wife who happens to have a kid who does something. It's so much randomness when you add it up. Billions of hundreds of 108 billion people, and if tens of thousands of years, you're getting somewhere. You're making history.
Well, I mean, I'm not really talking about destiny here per se.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm talking about is, I think, evolutionally speaking, it makes sense for a bunch of cells to bundle up together. It made sense at some point. And then not only that, but also the species themselves to bundle up together and form societies. And there is, if that's the case, then probably you can also define some sort of a social consciousness that is like the consciousness of your city that you're living in, or the town that you're living in, or just like the university that you're in. I mean, it's the same as like a bunch of cells that created you have this like mono consciousness. Probably there is like another consciousness on that level as well.
And you sort of see this, like Twitter has its own little weird culture and collective consciousness.
Yeah. And like there are sometimes that like some of the decisions that you make don't make any sense, right? Like, for example, your brain knows that smoking is bad, but yet you do it. And here you're kind of deciding which cell of your body to please. Like to please the brain with some dopamine, apparently, that the smoking might release. I'm not chemically intelligent enough to know exactly the biochemistry of the brain or anything like that. I'm just like assuming. But versus the fact that your lungs are going to be fucked or whatnot. And you know both of these, and yet you decide at a certain point to do one or the other. And this is like similar to how, say, in real life, maybe between two people, you're kind of sometimes deciding, hey, like we need to give this guy something extra. And it's very difficult to like keep everything balanced.